of being known as strong, independent, and committed to their faith. They set the foundation for us, so it's important for us to learn about their history so we can be better Muslims in America. It's estimated that if we go further back in history, it's estimated that about 30% of the people that were brought as slaves to this country were Muslim. They were kidnapped from West African countries like Nigeria, Senegal. So they came to this America with a very strong Muslim heritage. One of the people that was taken, one of the most famous Muslim slaves, his name was Umar ibn Sa'id. Some of you may have heard of him. But he was one of the Fula people who lived in the area now today as Senegal. Before he was taken, he was aged 37 when he was taken. Before he was taken, he was a scholar of Islam. He studied for over 25 years with local scholars in Africa. Even his older brother was a scholar named as Sheikh Muhammad Sa'id. So he was very knowledgeable about Islam, and he was kidnapped because an army came to his city. They killed most of the people and sold everyone else to slavery. And so he found himself on a boat all the way to America, across the Atlantic Ocean, known as the Big Ocean to him, because no one from that time had gone there, had passed it. So he was taken, plucked from his society, Muslim society, to a new land that he, over a distance that he could not just easily come back from. He landed in South Carolina. As soon as he landed, he tried to escape. He fled from the captors. And then he was found later in Fayetteville, North Carolina. So in North Carolina, he was jailed when they found him because they jailed runaway slaves. He spent some time in jail, and while he was in jail, he wrote Surah Al-Mulk on the walls. Can anyone guess why he chose to write Surah Al-Mulk? Yeah, so the reason he decided to write Surah Al-Mulk, and it wasn't just him, but it was many captive Muslim people that were doing this thing. The reason they chose Surah Al-Mulk is because Surah Al-Mulk reminds us that Allah is in control of everything. The first ayah, the translation is, "Exalted is he who holds all control in his hands, who has power over all things." So you can imagine why somebody like Umar ibn Sa'id, who was taken away from his hometown, taken from away from his people, they tried to stamp out his identity. This was a practice of the slave traders. They tried to stamp out your identity. They take you away from your people. If they hear you speaking a different language or congregating with some people, they take you away from them. They take you away from anyone of your culture, your clan, your family. They try to erase your identity, because when they can erase your identity, then you start to give up. You start to fight back less. And the slave traders, they knew that Muslims, they were the people that fought back the most because they had the faith that grounded them. They did not accept their condition. The Muslims were known. It was known by the colonies. They specifically said that they want to separate people from their Muslim identity. It was in their codes of conduct, because they knew that slaves of Muslim identity were those who were strong, committed to their faith, and they would not accept their condition. So this surah allowed the Muslims to stay connected to their faith, to feel hopeful, to know that everything is in Allah's control. No matter how bad it was for them at that time, no matter how alone they felt or how dark their situation was, their faith is what they held on to tightly. So while he was doing this, he was writing on the wall in the jail cell. He was noticed by the governor of North Carolina, and the governor was surprised by his literacy, because it was not common for people to be able to read and write. So he was surprised by his literacy. He said, "Wow, this is an educated man." He took him back to his mansion, and he said, "You will stay with me here. You will work here with me." So there, Umar ibn Sa'id lived the rest of his life. He lived a long life. He died in his 80s. And he was able to compile an autobiography in Arabic. And that's why we know about his story, because he was able to capture everything that had happened to him and capture his identity and everything so that it lasted until this day. So Umar ibn Sa'id had the lucky situation, well, not a lucky situation, but he had it better than other slaves because he was able to operate in the governor's mansion. He was able to read, write. He was able to um, share his story. But there's thousands and thousands of untold stories of Muslims that were taken away from Africa and forced to lose their identity in America. So how many people in America are descended from these people that were strong, faithful Muslims that they had their identity erased from them? The erasure of the Muslim identity of these slaves definitely has impacts on our society today. African Americans are not in touch with their culture. They're not in touch with their faith. They're not in touch with even their names. That's why Malcolm X took X in the end of his name, because he said, I'm not going to take a name from someone who was not part of, like, you know, the slave owner had done something that had forced his name to be taken. He said, I'm not going to take these guys' names. I don't know my real name, but I know I won't take that name. So he put an X in the end of his name. So today there's a big movement among African Americans to get back in touch with their culture. And there's a lot that we can do to be a resource for that. There's people like, there's many African Americans that have converted to Islam that are giving amazing da'wah to everyone in America. For example, a recent example that I can think of is a brother by the name of Stephen Jackson. He was a retired NBA player. He has over 1 million followers on his social media, and he recently found Islam. And he's talking to all of his followers every day. He's saying, you know, I found Islam. Islam is the truth. He's saying, you know, he's posting reminders to people saying that, you know, showing that he's praying his salah, he's dressed in his thobe and his kufi. He's giving amazing da'wah to his millions of followers. And people are starting to ask questions. They're commenting. You can go on social media right now. You can see African American people saying, can I learn a little bit more about Islam? I know about Islam. It's in my history. I've heard about it. I've heard about Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, but I need to know. I need some resources. And we're here in our community. We're practicing Islam, and we're not connected with these people when we are actually should be united. Imam Siraj al-Hajj said, Muslims will not be successful in America until there's a marriage between the indigenous and the immigrant communities. So by indigenous, he means the African American Muslims who were brought here as Muslim and who lost their identity and are reclaiming that identity. So us as immigrant Muslims, I was born here, but I'm still connected with the immigrant community. So we need to be able to connect with these African American Muslims that are connecting with Islam. The problem is that we are so disconnected, especially by geography, by class, by different things that keep us disconnected, but it is our job to go and connect with them. If we look at the Masjid of Islam in downtown Dallas, the oldest masjid in Dallas, over the past few years, they've been trying to expand. They have a small masjid and they serve a large community there, yet they have immense struggles to collect just some money to expand. Whereas in our suburban communities, we are raising millions of dollars in fundraisers and we're making huge masajid, and we're completely neglecting the needs of the Muslims that are in downtown. We went to a masjid last year with the Young Muslims. There's an organization called Young Muslims affiliated with ICNA, and we have local chapters in different masajid. Last year, we took a large group of these young Muslims from these suburban communities, and we went to a masjid in downtown. It was not Masjid al-Islam, it was a masjid nearby, but it was in a neighborhood, a predominantly African American neighborhood, a masjid there. It was a tiny masjid, and we had 100 youth of us, and we were crammed in every corner of the masjid. And the people of the community, the organizers, they were so happy to see so many youth coming and being excited about their community. And they said, we need your help. They said, we're not getting any support from other masjids or in other communities. We are having a hard time connecting with them. And they said, we need volunteers, we need people that can help us become more involved. And then in that moment, I realized that, we have been so disconnected from these Muslim communities that have been, this masjid has been there for decades. So these masjids have been operating for a long, long time. Yet over here, we're just operating on our own and we don't know what's going on there. Unfortunately, this event happened just before the coronavirus pandemic hit. So we were not able to continue our partnership with the Young Muslim organization and the masjid there. But inshallah, when things are better, we should definitely reach out and connect with people. There's a story that I read about two people, very interesting story. One of them his name was Dr. Farouk Khan. He was a doctor from Long Island, New York. And he was the shura president for a masjid there. And then there's another man by the name of Imam Al-Hajj Talib. He was an African-American imam from Harlem, New York. So Harlem and Long Island are not too far from each other. But these two communities were completely separate from each other. Dr. Farouk and Imam Al-Hajj Talib knew each other, but there was a weird relationship between them because Dr. Farouk he was hesitant to connect with the Black American people because he felt that he did not want to get involved with, he said this regrettably later, but at the time he said, African Americans, they're so political. How do I connect with them? We're not trying to get attention here. This is a mentality of many Muslims, especially immigrant Muslims. We're not trying to get attention here. We just want to fit in. We want to assimilate. We don't want to, we don't want the police looking at us. We don't want the government looking at us. So he did not. Him and Imam Al-Hajj, his perspective from the beginning was he met Dr. Farouk. This was at a Muslim convention in Chicago. They met each other. Imam Al-Hajj said that his impression of Dr. Farouk was he was acting like he was superior, or he was like looking down upon the Black Muslims. So these two people, they did not like each other at first at all. They had a very bad impression. Then soon after was the events of September 2001, and they were forced to connect at that time. They were forced to connect. And an interesting thing here is Dr. Farouk, he during his time as being a leader in his community, before the crisis, he was trying to get in good with the local people. He was talking to the congressmen and the police, and he actually became such good friends with the congressman there that the congressman was coming to his house weekly for dinners, and the congressman came to his son's wedding as a guest of honor. So he was very close with him. This is who he decided to ally with. Then this congressman by the name of Peter King, after the event of September 2001, he quickly turned on his heel and betrayed Dr. Farouk. He betrayed their friendship. He started going to the news and he started saying, Dr. Farouk is an extremist because he's not denouncing the events. He even wrote a book. Listen to this clearly. He wrote a book in 2004 where he said the plot of the book was a Long Island doctor and leader in a masjid orchestrates a terrorist attack that kills hundreds of people in the city. And what do you of course this is talking about Dr. Farouk, of course. And Dr. Farouk felt extremely betrayed. He said, how could this man turn on me? But of course, what's his name? Congressman Peter King, he's taking advantage of the situation. He's fear-mongering. He's pushing people against, he's making people think Muslims are scary. He's using that as fuel for his campaign. He wants to keep his Congress seat. But the point here is that we have to be careful with who we are working with and who we are leaving behind. The African American Muslims can be our best allies. They should be our best allies. I mean African Americans, not just African American Muslims, African Americans, because we have such a rich history that connects with their history. And we need, if we're separated, we can easily be conquered. If we work together, and we're united, then we'll be strong. So Dr. Farouk, after he got betrayed, he started thinking about the Imam al-Hajj from Harlem, and how they had spoke before but they hadn't connected. And then he started reading about African American history and the struggles that they went through in this country. And then he said in an interview, he said he felt enlightened. He said he did not understand truly the effects that African Americans, he was one of those people who would say, why are they always political? And after this event, then he realized, after he started researching and he started understanding the culture, the history, he started to realize that, there's a reason that they're political. How come Muslims, we think, African Americans are too political, we don't want to be associated with them, and then we see people talking about Palestine and we support them and we give them our donations? How come nobody ever criticizes them with the same thing? So there's a problem here. We have to understand that there's some racism that is sometimes inside our bodies, inside of our hearts, that we don't realize. And we have to kick that out of our body. That should not be there. We have to read history, and we have to talk to people and find ways to include them and to understand their perspectives. Otherwise, our communities will never be united. It's natural that we like to connect with people that are similar to us. The Arabs like to speak with the Arabs. The Desis like to sit with the Desis. But if we want our community to really be strong, if we want our community to be a model for America, not just for Muslims, but for America, then we really have to put effort in finding people, in giving them leadership positions. When we give people leadership positions, then they can create an environment where other people are comfortable. For example, let's say that we have a community where the youth are not part of the leadership. Their voices are not listened to. Now, when a youth comes to this masjid, do you think that the environment that was created for them is going to be something that they feel like it's made for them? They feel welcome. It's not very common. We have a lot of people that like to exclude the youth. When they're excluding them, they're not making the environment suitable for them. So in the same vein, when we have a community that's only caters to Desis, then we are excluding everybody who does not identify with that. When the community, the whole leadership, all the decision making is made by a small group of people, then everyone else does not feel welcome. And it's hard to understand sometimes, because we are part of this community, and we feel our perspectives are heard, but we need to ask other people, do you feel your perspective is heard? Do you feel welcome in this community? And if the answer is no, then how can we better serve other communities? So this is a question that even I am thinking about. How can we better serve other communities? And to find the answer, we have to really talk to people. There's no easy answer. There's no answer that we can just Google and click on the first link and find our answer. This is something that needs to be take effort from each of us, to find people of different perspectives, to ask them, how can we make you feel more welcome in this community? So there's a lecture tomorrow. There's a panel of speakers, African American leaders, Muslim leaders, here at this masjid after Dhuhr. So please come and listen, because I can tell you my perspective, but if you want to get the real perspective, then you have to listen to people from that group. So let's do our best, inshallah, to put an effort, to listen to people, to make people feel heard, to create a united community. And inshallah, then we'll be the best that we can be. Tomorrow after Dhuhr, inshallah. Yeah. There's a panel of speakers, inshallah. So there's going to be a moderator. You can ask questions and answers. So it's going to be a good event, inshallah. Try to make it, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.